was riding along in the car with my 5-year-old granddaughter in the back seat. She was chattering away, and I wasn't paying particular attention until she said this. My friends asked me to be their boss. I said yes. So now I'm the boss. And I had to chuckle. Wow, that sounds a lot like politicians I know today on both the left and the right side of the political spectrum. Welcome to this deep dive regarding power and influence in leadership. This is a very important subject these days, as we're having abundant examples of leaders using power. It's a perfect opportunity for us to think deeply about the relationship between leadership and power. In fact, leadership is a lot like dynamite. It can make things happen, but you can cause a lot of damage. Now, if I was to ask you for a quote regarding power, you most likely would make the one coined by Lord Acton. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And history is full of examples that illustrate this truth, including Christian leaders. So consequently, when it comes to the subject of power, we're a little bit conflicted about this because we're not doing it very well in many places. In fact, the misuse of power is one of the most common leadership mistakes. Now, leadership and power are intimately connected, and anyone in leadership uses power constantly. So we really need to get clarity around this important subject in order to master our Christian leadership. Now, there are two very common mistakes around this subject of power. The first one is not knowing you have it, and then not using it, or maybe denying it. Unfortunately, people look to leaders for action, for direction. And when you don't step up, they wonder, well, why not? You've got the power. The other mistake is knowing you have it and misusing it. Oh, this is really painful when this happens. So friends, we need some help with this one. In fact, I'm going to turn to Andy Crouch and his book, Playing God, Redeeming the Gift of Power. He gives us a biblical understanding of power and a practical use for its application. So if you want to really dive deep, go ahead and get this book. Now, it actually pairs with another of his books called Culture Making. And here he talks about the mandate from our Creator to make the world beautiful, to create an abundance of good. And power is the ability to do just that. Now, he warns us that if we take our understanding of power from the world, we will miss its promise and misjudge its dangers. And that's because the world's definition of power has been heavily influenced by this man, Friedrich Nietzsche. He's a German philosopher who became one of the most influential of all modern thinkers. He attempts to unmask the deep motives that underlie all traditional Western religion and morality and philosophy, and he has succeeded in deeply affecting generations of theologians and philosophers, psychologists, poets, novelists, playwrights. It's everywhere, folks. And unfortunately, he has a very cynical view of power. It's become the contemporary view of power. And he sees it primarily as a contest of wills. Nietzsche and others see power as essentially coercion. And his view has gained credibility and spread throughout the West, especially in the universities. Entire academic departments were created to find examples of how power was abusive. Women's studies and how they've been abused by men. Minority studies, how they've been abused by other people. Racial studies and how they've been abused by this other race. Economic, how the rich have abused the poor. On and on. Underlying it all is this cynical assumption that anyone with power is going to use it and will abuse it. And so let's just take a look at what Nietzsche thought about power. He said, space and power are limited. It's a quantity that's limited, which means if I have power, I have to keep it. And if you have power, it means I don't have what you've got. In fact, other people are the problem, because if they've got power, I need to take it from them because I want the power. Because the goal is to dominate and control. And if you have to, you cooperate with people in order to gain from them, because ultimately, friends, the purpose is to seize power. Now, this cynical assumption has completely permeated our Western culture, and it's put us in a bit of a quandary, because when we read our Bible, it does talk about power. It talks about God being all powerful, but not like this. When we read the scriptures, it doesn't feel like this. So we're going to have to understand and get a better grip on the gift and the danger of power. And in order to be able to make sense of this, we're going to have to put it back in the context of the Christian story, where it describes where power originates. We, friends, we need a better theology around power. And I'll begin to help us build that understanding in the next video.